Greetings, I'm Rob Chappers, and today I am here to help you get out of your rut. This is going to be awesome. I'm going to give you physical, practical things to do. I'm not just going to talk to you, and actually I'm going to set you an assignment or some homework at the end of this video. When you feel re-enthused, re-energized, and you've got an action plan of things to do, I'd like you to shoot a video of what you were able to overcome or what you were able to do. Post the link in the comment section below so I can take a look to as many of them as is humanly possible. I think that's going to be really, really cool. So let's get started with getting you out of a rut. In my experience, a rut is one of two things. Firstly, you either cannot overcome a physical difficulty. So for example, you want to be able to maybe sweep or play faster, or there's a particular lick or riff that you cannot do, something physical, a barrier that you can't pass. There are many ways of overcoming that I'm going to teach you. The other rut is when you are stuck in the creative process, so maybe you're writing a riff or a song, or even just jamming with friends, and you're finding it hard to progress to the next level of that creative aspect of what you are doing. Two very different things, but people call it a rut when they can't progress further with either the physical thing or the creative thing. Let's start with the physical thing, and then we'll move into the creative thing. I probably couldn't count the number of times that people have told me they can't stretch far enough or can't reach easily. They feel their hands are too small to play particular chords or riffs or licks or whatever you're trying to do. And I think stretching and being able to reach things is something that really puts off beginner to intermediate players, by which I mean players who can play a riff, maybe some open chords, jam a bit of blues, that kind of thing. They find it hard to progress because they feel they can't reach. This is item number one. So everyone hold your hand up and do this. And then take that splayed paw, pop it on the fretboard, and look at how far you can really reach. It's a long distance. It's much longer than you probably think it was going to be. The difference comes when you turn it around and put it this way. Some of your ergonomics, the way that you fit your hand to the guitar, change. And as a result of the change, the distance is diminished. It's a nice musical term for you. So let's work out why that happens to guitar players. And the first thing is, the way I'm sat is not particularly practical for someone learning to play the guitar. Now, I'm experienced and I can play, so for me this is fine. But what you really need is the neck elevated like this. Because if you hold your hands out in front of you, and I ask you to do that, you'll find that your forearm is under tension. And if you relax it, it turns slightly. So you don't want to be under tension because that will close up all sorts of areas of the physiology in your wrist. So rather than having it flat, which would be like this, see the neck is, landscape, that's actually putting a little bit of stress inside your forearm. You want your hand to be like that. So what you really need is the guitar elevated. And this is also more of a live position. If you stand up and play, you don't stand up with your guitar landscape. Or if you do, good on you, good luck. You'll see most players have it elevated like this. It fits to the body better. It's what we call ergonomic. So to begin with, try playing with the neck slightly more raised than you are used to if you practice when you sit down. Because a lot of people practice sat in a really weird posture and it doesn't help them. You need to have relaxation from the shoulder all the way through the 3 points, the elbow and the wrist. The next thing is, if you're finding it hard to stretch, it's almost 100% of the time because the wrist and the thumb are in the wrong position. So what you really need is that wrist to be sunk down and the thumb to be on the back of the guitar like this, in what we call a classical hand position. That way you can reach all sorts of silly stretches and things, and it will make you feel more able. That doesn't mean you can't put your thumb over. I'm always putting my thumb over the top to play blues and some chords and voicings and things. But if you can't reach something, more often than not, it's because your wrist is not down here and your thumb is not on the back of the guitar. I'm just going to quickly demonstrate that physically. So with my thumb on top, trying to play an F bar chord, I simply cannot do it. But watch what happens to my hand as I bring my thumb down. Suddenly it opens up. See, that closes, opens. So it's really altering the position of the fingers and the way that the tendons wrap and pass over each other. The next area that I want you to work in is the area of tempo. So again, more often than not, if you're trying to do something that you can't, it's because you're trying to do it too fast. And if you slow it down, you'll find it much, much easier to accomplish what you want to do, and then bring the tempo up, and then before you know it, you'll be playing, Van Halen, Steve Vai, Yngwie Malmsteen. If you can play it slow, bring the tempo up, and then eventually you'll be able to play it fast. You need to have a metronome or a drum machine or a backing track, but really something that you can change the tempo of, or else you're always going to be overreaching yourself and you'll never actually develop the speed with your mind in the speed. You'll be flying around uncontrollable, but you need your mind in control of your hand. And you only get that if you slow it down, work on it, fully understand it, and then incrementally bring up the speed. So here's an exercise that I want you to try and learn, and I want you to try and do it really, really, really slowly, and then gradually develop the speed and bring it up until you can play it to a pretty good tempo. I don't even know what this exercise is called. I've had it for so long in my repertoire, but it looks and sounds like this. And it's a combination of alternate picking and sweeping in the same little pocket of difficult joy. So we're starting on the 8th fret, all the fingers down on the E string, and we're going to go back 8, 7, 6, 5, starting with a down pick and alternate. So 8, 7, 6, 5, and then since that was an upstroke, we're going to continue up on the 6th fret, up on the 7th fret, up on the 8th fret, and then down on the 7th fret D, up on the 6th fret D, and then down on the 5th fret D, and then continue the shape mirror imaged. So 6th fret G, 7th fret B, 8th fret E. To begin with, I expect you to play this really slowly, something a little bit like this. And then eventually, incrementally bring up the speed. Please try to make sure that the sweeping sections are a sweep. Don't pick each individual string. Let them just slide through the strings, and try and keep all the notes even in volume. Try and keep the dynamic the same. Don't cheat and use a compressor pedal. Oh no. Okay, let's take a look at some chords and take something that you might already know, but move it to create musical movement and inspire you. So here's an A minor 11 shape. And I'm taking my second finger, putting it on the 5th fret. I'm taking my third finger and putting it on the 5th fret D string. Little finger right underneath it on the 5th fret G string. First finger on the 3rd fret B string. And you can play the open high E underneath it. But make sure that the A string is muted underneath that second finger. I know it's an A chord, but if you want to move it, it's good to be able to mute it just in case. I mean, for this you can. You can leave it open, but don't. So that's an A minor 11 chord. And it's a great sounding chord, and I play it a lot. But let's move the bass note from the A down to a G sharp and see what happens. It creates movement, and it feels like it wants to go somewhere else. Can you feel that? It's like a magnetic feeling. So from here, it's kind of happy. When I move that bass note down, it wants to resolve to the G note. It's being pulled to that G chord. It's really important to pay attention to the magnetic feelings of chords when you are writing music or when you are jamming over them, because those are things that you're going to be targeting with your playing. You're going to target notes, like in COD, wasn't it? Let's do it again. I'll teach you one of my favourite E voicings. This is a beautiful E chord, so just an open E string. And then we're going to use the 11th fret on the A string with my third finger. We're going to use the 9th fret D string with my first finger. And then my little finger is tucked down on the G string at the 11th fret. And then the B and E string are open. So that you get... Now, if anyone is old enough to remember the original Robin of Sherwood series that went... which was written by Claned, I understand. This chord, I remember desperately trying to find out what the chord was at the beginning of Robin of Sherwood. I think this is it. Anyway, it's a wicked chord. Again, let's move the bass note. So from this E, let's bring it to a D. And then maybe to a C sharp. Where does it want to go next? It wants to pull all the time. These chords. They have a feeling in them that you can listen to that will help direct your writing. So take a chord that you know. Maybe take a C9. Nice simple chord. Looks a bit like a G major, but it's a C9. If you're not aware of the shape, I've got a video which teaches you a bunch of cool chord shapes, just recently. And you can move a note. So let's move this C note down to, B. And you could even move a top note. So rather than playing the G on top, what about if it was an F sharp? Ultimately, what I'm saying is go and discover some cool chord voicings. You can't really write a chord because they've all been created, but you can certainly discover them. And I recently discovered this. And it's spawned 2 new tracks for Clockwork Wolf and Company, which have been really, really exciting and inspirational for the new album that we're currently writing. Not fast enough. I've got just the cure for you. Do less, basically. If you feel like you can't do something fast enough, it's either because you don't fully comprehend it, you don't really understand it, or it could be because you're moving too much, either with the pick or with the left hand. And I would absolutely recommend that you go and take a look at a couple of good players. 3 players. Number 1, Jerry Douglas. Probably one of the best guitar players in the world. Jerry Douglas is insane. Plays a dobro, plays slide. That guy is an absolute master, and you'll steal 1,000 licks from him, just like I did. So go check out Jerry Douglas. The next one, Rick Graham. Rick, arguably the fastest, cleanest, most low-down man around this town. That was a quote from Big Trouble. Oh no, The Last Dragon, even better. Rick Graham is incredible. Please go and check him out. He has a phenomenal left hand and an incredible right hand and a ridiculous brain. So just watch his technique. And then Johnny Highland, again, an absolute monster player. And the thing that these 3 people have in common is that they don't move very much. So when they want to play something fast, the fingers barely leave the string. They hover over. It's economy of movement on every possible level. So the pick moves just the correct amount it needs to travel across the string. So if this is a string and this is my pick, I'm not picking from here, I'm picking from here. And when I pass through it, I finish here. I don't finish here. Do you see what I'm saying? Small controlled movements win the game. It's really evident in Rick Graham's playing when you see him on Instagram. Johnny Highland will play a country lick, and he's so good you'll barely see his left hand moving when he's playing stuff a bit like... It glides across the guitar. So when you're learning something and you can't play fast enough, find areas of movement that you can shave off. Here is an exercise for that. We're just going to take one shape and we're going to apply this shape over the fretboard, coming up, and we're just going to pick it with economy picking. And even if you don't want to do economy picking, learn from this exercise. It's going to take you far because you're going to learn about minimalism in guitar movement. So we'll stick in the same area. We're going to go 8, we're going to go 6, and we're going to go 5. But we're going to do that on every string. Always 8, 6, 5. It's going to be... That's it. That's all I want you to do, but I want you to pick it up, down, up, up, down, up, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. So that there's no wasted movement, so that every pick strike is coming from an area that is practical and makes sense. So I'm not going over a string to pick down, I'm not going above a string to pick through it. I'm just picking in the correct direction all the time for economy. I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't alternate pick. Alternate picking is brilliant and a really useful thing to do, and it sounds great. It's much easier, I think, to keep in time and rhythm with alternate picking. But economy picking will teach you economy of movement. Learn it and then discard it if you don't want it. So start off nice and slow, get a metronome kicking off, and we're just going to glide the pick. So it's going to go up, down, up, up. And those two ups, don't consider them to be up, up. Consider them to be up. You're going straight through both. My right hand doesn't stop moving. It should be nice and smooth. And again, start slow and then incrementally build up the speed until you can just blaze it, hoon across that board at a lightning speed, and then try going down. Same situation, economy of movement. And if you want to change the shape, you can do. Let's get you thinking differently. What are you listening to? Because in my experience, if you don't listen to lots of new and interesting music, if your environment stays the same, you will get in a rut. So something that I do is go to iTunes and look up the latest top charting bands in whichever genre you are interested in. But then also go and check out bands in genres that you are not interested in, because you might find something inspires you if you listen to a new kind of music. So if you're into hardcore or if you're into punk, go and listen to Alison Krauss and Union Station. Go and listen to Lightning Hopkins, Howlin' Wolf. Go back in time as well as at the cutting edge of time. You can learn from people who were inspired by people before them. And I really think if you're, say for example, you're really, really into Van Halen and you want to write music that sounds like Van Halen, well, who did he listen to? Suddenly you've got a whole bunch of people who inspired him to go and learn from, because ultimately they created, in a way, him. So find out who inspired your heroes and then make yourself a playlist of all of their music. So for example, I was inspired by Kim Thayil, Joe Satriani, Peter Green, Jimi Hendrix, Marty Friedman, there's hundreds, Steve Vai, loads of them. But also by singers like Tina Turner and Alison Krauss, Robert Plant. The band Big Wreck were huge in my life. Go and listen to all of them because they're great. The new music will really help to unstick your mind, but changing your environment is probably going to be the biggest single change in getting you out of a rut. And your environment is many things. So where are you practicing? Are you practicing at home? Because maybe you want to go to a local rehearsal studio and just book a room, if it's affordable, and just practice in there. Get a different environment to play in. Or maybe go out and busk, or meet a friend for a coffee and jam with him. It will change the way that you play. Just like if I pick up this blue Ghost fret, I'm going to play differently than I will do if I pick up this beautiful Paoletti Clockwork Wolf Company branded guitar, because it will make me feel like a different kind of player. Environment has the same effect as the gear that you use sometimes, and also it sounds different. For example, this vaulted ceiling in the studio room sounds very different to a carpeted living room. You can really hear the room. It's got a lovely room sound to it, makes me play in a different way. Another immediate area of your environment that you can change is your tuning. Many people are used to playing in standard tuning or, down a semitone or even drop D, but very few players stray into altered tunings or tuning to an open chord, which I have found so inspirational and really, really, really practical and useful for writing. And then, if you haven't tried it, go and get a slide. Even if you don't want to play slide, learn a little bit about slide because it will change the way that your mind thinks about the guitar. It's a really, really cool thing to do. Let's talk about open tunings really quickly. So, and you don't have to do this right now. This is just something that I want you to try and play with because it will change the way that you play, because the notes will all be wrong. All the scale shapes that you spent years studying, gone. You don't need them. You could try this. Everyone knows an E major chord. I'm out of tune, but that's an E major chord shape. All I want you to do is, unless you've got 12 gauge strings on, then change your gauge of string. But take every note you're fretting down and tune the open string to that note. So for example, this 2nd fret A string, 2nd fret D string, 1st fret G, and then I'll just quickly tune the rest. So now I'm tuned to an E chord. Now, I can get my slide, and all of a sudden, it's a completely different world. I can't play any of my scales, so suddenly I'm limited, and limitations force creativity. So really, please remember that. Limitations force creativity. If you can't write something, get rid of a string. Remove the bottom 2 strings. You'll find that you'll start writing something quicker. Tune a string differently. Try open tuning. Change your tone. You may have noticed that I am playing with a clean tone and I am not using any reverb. I can't really explain to you why that suddenly happened, because if you know my channel and my playing, I have never played with a clean tone really, and I never play without reverb. But something happened recently. I was writing music with Clockwork Wolf Company, getting a whole album polished off, and sat in a rehearsal and a recording studio on my own, just working at the tunes. I found the sound of reverb to be tiring. It was wearing me down. It wasn't in my face and real enough, and I wanted a room sound of the room I was in. So I turned the reverb off, and I haven't turned it on since. Now, it's a bit of a weird one because I like the sound of reverb, but now I can't play with it. It was an overnight change. If you are used to playing with a particular kind of effect, I'm not necessarily talking about gain, but if you use reverb all the time, turn it off, see how it feels. If you normally use a bit of delay, get rid of it and see how it feels. Because the way the feedback you get from the guitar, the sound, makes you play differently. It's another way of switching you out of that mindset. And so recently I've killed the reverb, and then I wrote best part of an album in 3 days with the guys. So here's another cool thing though, talking about removing reverb, putting loads of it on. Now I know that sounds mad, but you might just find things that you can do with effects pedals that you hadn't discovered before, like I did. I've got this new Neighbor Immerse reverberator on the floor, and it's got a switch on it. And this switch kills all of the dry signal and only lets out of the pedal the the wet signal. So you just hear the effect and suddenly it transports you to another world. And I know lots and lots of pedals that you can tweak with and do weird things to that they're kind of not really intended to be used that way. If you know one, please comment in the comment section below, because I know loads of pedals that do this, like flange pedals, where you can just get the sound of the tube it's kind of in, but no movement, for example. It's a cool thing. It makes it sound different. Or taking a wah pedal, leaving it on at a certain frequency, gives you this unique new tone. But for example, with the immersed reverberator, here it is if I turn it on with lots of reverb. But now, I'm just gonna let the wet signal come out and no dry signal. Check it out, it's really bizarre. Well, there you go, from no reverb to all of the reverb in one video. I think that's probably a Chappers first. You guys take it easy. Please don't forget, your assignment is to shoot a video showing me anything that you've overcome from learning from this video. I'll take a look, I'll leave some feedback, as much as I can anyway. You guys take it easy. Chappers out. Explosion.